All right, so this is weird, and we're going to get through it. But welcome to the first day back of sports data. We're going to talk about tables today. I'm going to start dividing up these lessons into three parts, which is what, why, and how. You can probably figure out what each one of them does. But the what in this case, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about tables. And what do tables do? They allow readers to compare something. We want them to be able to see the rest of a thing with their peers. Now, as we've been talking about all along, we want to highlight given things, and the table library that we're going to use today will let us do that. We are going to open things up for people, though. We'll highlight something that we're interested in, but we're going to allow them to compare to other things in our table and other things in our list. So, how does our highlighted thing compare to the top, to the bottom, to some teams that I care about, but you don't? And that brings us to the why. Sometimes the best visualization of a piece of data is a table. So it's more efficient. You can just show the 10 things that you're interested in. It allows you to be more open about what's around the things that you're choosing to highlight so people can see it. So you've picked a team to be in the top 10 teams of all time, but who are the other teams in that list? Or the greatest players of all time? You've declared somebody the GOAT. Who else is in that list? Who else is in that argument? And let people make up their own mind. As for the how, I'm going to switch over to screencasting for that. So here we go. Okay, today we're going to talk about tables. And tables don't always get the most attention, and they're not always the sexiest thing in the world, but sometimes what you have is a table, and sometimes you just need to show people what the data is and let them make their own decision. So R has a couple of really interesting libraries for making tables, and we're going to explore one of them today. It's called Cable. So what I'm doing here is I've got the Tidyverse loaded up. I've got my stats loaded in here, which is just stats of all basketball teams in the now sadly ended 2020 season or 2019-2020 season. We've worked with this file before. I've made myself a vector of Big Ten schools here so that I could filter them out. And here you go. I've got my Big Ten schools and their stats. So what I also want to do here is I'm going to use select just to thin the herd a little bit. I want the school. And what I'm really after here is what did we learn? What did we learn about Fred Hoiberg? What did we learn about Fred Hoiberg's method of basketball? And one thing I am interested in is the number of three-point attempts. So we have 3-point attempts. And if I run this, I will get just two columns, school and 3-point attempts. So where did Nebraska come out in this? We can now arrange by descending 3-point attempts, and Nebraska came in fourth in the league in 3-point attempts, but only one behind Maryland, 20 behind Wisconsin, and 21 behind Penn State. So pretty substantial number of 3-point shots. If we did this last year, we'd see that it was nowhere near that. So I like this. Let's just call this threes. And I'm just going to save it like that. So the library that we're going to be using today, and you'll need to install it if you don't have it already, is called Cable Extra. So, and it's cable with a K. Cable Extra, like that. If you haven't installed it, just open up the terminal here. To install packages, cable, capital E Extra, and I'm going to cancel that because I've already got it installed, and we'll just bum out of it. But for you at work, go right ahead and do that. Okay, so I load Cable Extra. What's great about Cable Extra is it does cable is actually built into the tidyverse into a function called knitter, which is what's making these pages that you're reading. Cable Extra adds a bunch of tools to make these tables really kind of nice. So it doesn't take a lot of code, and it also uses piping syntax the way we've been used to. So I'm going to take my data set and I'm going to pipe, and I'm just going to call cable like that. And you'll see pretty quickly, got a table. It looks better than what I had above when we were looking at that, but it's not great by any stretch of the imagination. So we can add another function after this called cable underscore styling, and it will immediately create a much nicer looking table like that. We can add some things to this, and this is going to start getting real wide, so I'm going to start dropping these down after, dropping them down like this. So a lot of tables that you'll see are striped, where one of the rows is gray and the next one's white and the next one's gray, and so on and so forth. So we can add something called bootstrap options, and in here we can add striped. I run that. You'll see now that every other one is sort of a off-white gray color like that. If we want to have multiple bootstrap options here, we have to create a list like this. So the other one I'm going to use is condensed. And what that's going to do is it's going to squeeze the lines and make them not quite so wide. Since I have 14 of them here, it gets a little bit long. So let's just go ahead and do that. Okay. Now, this is not looking bad. This does what it does, but cable does a lot of really other interesting things. Let's say that I want to highlight Nebraska. So I'm going to go and use something called row spec, and I can tell it what row I'm going to use. I could use ranges, like if I wanted to do the first 4 rows, I could do 1 through 4 like that. But no, I only really care about Nebraska, so I'm only going to do row 4. I'm going to make it bold, and the T in this case is true. I'm going to make the text white because of what I'm going to do next. I'm going to give that row a background, and I didn't look this up beforehand, but I should have. I'm doing that on another screen. I'm looking up the hex code for Nebraska's Scarlet, and it is that. So what this is going to do is, oops, and I need that in quotes, my bad. What this is going to do is it's going to turn the Nebraska line Nebraska Scarlet red and make the word Nebraska and the number 744 in white and highlight Nebraska pretty strongly on there. Just in case you couldn't figure out where Nebraska was in that regard. Maybe I want to make all of the school's text bold. So I just pipe in another thing. There is a column spec as well. I want to make column 1. I'll make it bold equals T. Run that, and you'll see Penn State, Wisconsin, Maryland, so on and so forth become bold. Nebraska is still highlighted. And truth be told, right here, this is probably enough to publish. We'd probably go with this. I wouldn't mind seeing this in a publication somewhere just on its own. There's a few things that we probably ought to fix. One of which is this over here. We can do that by just doing rename and we're going to make this like this, and then you name it the thing that it was, so 3 point attempts, and then that will pipe into there. Everything else should be good, and indeed that cleans that up just nicely. So I'm pretty happy with this. What we have to do now is we have to export it. And unlike some other things that I have used in the past, Cable does a pretty good job of exporting these things. And it's just simply save Cable. And oops, don't want to do that. So before I give it a name, I need to save my notebook quickly. So I'm going to just do that. I'm just going to put it on my desktop. I'll just call it Cable, because then when I save this, I'll call this threes.pdf. Boy, yeah, there we go. And I will go ahead and run that. And when it does, it will take a few seconds, but it will eventually tell me that HTML color may not be displayed on PDF properly. Spoiler alert, it does show just fine. It's called threes.pdf, and there it is. And that's how you create a table. Look through the chapter. There is some other stuff that you can do that can help highlighting. Hint, that will be in the assignment. And at the end of this chapter, there's also a walkthrough on how to clean this up in Illustrator. You will also need that for the assignment. And yeah, good luck.